Hey yo, what up, me gente? It's your boy Omega. Welcome to a brand new Comic Crusaders GeekFest Special. Cause man, we got an amazing creative team that has a fire project that put me on, put Al onto stuff. Got me about to throw my wire on the screen more than Bobo, because he really put me into something that I really do like just through this and the creator and all. But before I even introduce the very talented people that behind this project I'm about to talk about, let me first bring up my co-pilot, creator himself, an artist, writer, filmographer, fellow crusader, the one and only Mr. Jeff Bracy. What's popping, kiddo? How you
No,
doing?
hold your applause. Hold your applause. We're cool.
Mm,
Like I'm just a person like everybody else.
Thanks for hanging out today, man. Because I know when I knew I had to ask someone from the team, like, yo, what y'all think about this? And I knew Bracy would eat this up.
I did, man. I did, and as we were talking to the pre-show, and I'm sure we'll get into this with the guys. This film was very enlightening for me.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about creator Scott McCloud, who I'd only known from his very famous book Understanding Comics. I I never questioned where he got his understanding. Was he just some sort of comic aficionado, comic historian?
Mm-hmm.
But to find out that this guy has a deep, deep history and connections in the comic community, and to actually see his products, this film has done something that's very rare for somebody who's a fan at my age. They've shown me, like yourself, they've shown me something new and something that I'm also going to get into. Now I've got to go get a hold of
Uh,
back issues of Zot and Destroy and
Oh
see what
man, now
else
I
he's
gotta
got going
compete.
on.
I gotta compete with him now, guys, on the shopping verse for this stuff, and then all of you after you see this amazing film. But let me introduce the amazing creative team. We have them right here, folks. You got two of the big boys right here that handles the amazing project that's currently touring on Geek Fest, Film Fest. All right, let me introduce the one and only Dallas Hallam and Ben Lewis. What's popping, fellas? How you doing?
Doing
Good,
fantastic.
good.
Yo, first up, thanks for hanging out today to
Mm.
talk about your amazing project that's touring on Geek Fest. Understanding Scott McCloud. I mean, talk about I mean, we're gonna get into it. It's gonna be fun because you guys put me on. As Jeff said, I'm like, how have I not seen this before? But again, not an excuse. But in my hood, independent wasn't what was hot in that age range that came out. Everybody was DC Marvel, so I didn't have the accessibility, and the shops didn't order it. Unfortunately, apparently, 'cause they wanted a big money. Um, but you guys introduced me to something that I'm about to start throwing my wallet out over the socials, and I have a secret weapon where I could probably find most of them. Or I'm gonna have to ask Scott because his copies look pristine in this movie. I mean, for real. So let's start with origin stories, fellas. A little bit about yourselves before we get into the greatness of the film. So let's start with Dallas right here, yo. Looking like a heavy metal singer. I expected some guitars to be hanging on the wall and stuff.
I'm in the no guitars on the wall.
All right. So where
That,
you from, OG, and talk about your first taste of fandom.
sure. Well, I'm actually originally from Birmingham, Alabama. The super quick story is I went to film school in Iowa, and then I moved to Los Angeles, where I started working in the
What
film
age?
industry. I moved to LA when I was about 21,
Okay.
22. I mean, right after college,
All
and
right.
then that's where I met Ben. We worked together on a bunch of TV shows, and I made some other
How?
independent
Oh, wait a
films.
minute. Oh, wait. I need to know then. What was the what's the origin story of the bromance then? How did you meet Ben?
Well, we met on a show called Punked, which I'm sure everybody's heard of.
Word? You met
Yeah,
there? What do you mean? As an audience member or a part of it?
yeah. No, Ben was getting punked.
Oh,
No, no, no.
I'm about to say
Uh,
that.
That's
yeah,
great.
I worked on a movie in Iowa for the PBS movie called Cora Unashamed,
Okay.
and on that movie I met a bunch of people from LA. So when I moved to LA, I contacted them and found some work. One person leads to another, and I ended up at an art department shop that Ben was running, and
Okay.
and the big show we were doing there, Oscar Alberni was the name of the production designer. The big show we were working on was Punked. So for my first couple years in LA, I was doing all that kind of stuff, the hidden camera stuff, and Ben and I worked closely together.
All right. And
And
what roles
eventually,
were you handling that? The same as you guys hold now? Yeah, no.
I
Ben
mean,
is shaking his head like,
for
yeah.
sure, I wasn't directing anything. I was just
Okay.
helping build camera hides. But
Okay.
because you would have to on a show like Punks, you would have a situation like someone is eating in a restaurant, and so you'd have to have 8 or 9 camera people with tripods and big cameras hidden somewhere in that restaurant. So we would come in and build walls with fake glass and places for people to hide and things like that. So, but Ben was kind of a producer in a way. He was like telling everybody what to do and where to go and what they did wrong.
Oh man, naughty, you don't do it like this. Oh man. All right. Before you continue, so Ben, talk about that. I mean, even before you let me know if he's fibbing or not. Where you from originally?
I grew up in Boston. I went to film school in Boston.
All right.
And then I moved out to LA because what are you going to do with a
And
film
what
degree?
age did you go out there?
I was actually, I got a degree in film and then I went to art school for a few years.
Okay.
So I moved out here when I was 26, 27 years old, something
Okay,
like that.
Okay.
And worked
Do
on a
you
lot
guys
of...
just move out there like blindly, or do you guys have a game plan, or is it like, oh well, let me just go?
Hey, it's for me at least, it was a lot of the benefits of going to film school is you meet a bunch of people who want to make films. And because I went so late, I already knew a bunch of people who had moved to LA and had, gotten apartments and had lives, and I could crash on their couch. So
the guy on the
easy.
couch. Yeah, bro. The guy on the couch.
The dude on the couch.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I think that's a journey that everyone must go through at one point, as part of the story. I mean, look at poor Rock. He was the guy in the car. Poor Rock. With a family. I mean, more crazy.
No, you have to go and just sort of, if you want to do something creative, especially in entertainment, it's like it's a little easier now with the internet. But in the 90s, it was like you had to go to New York or LA, and it was like, well, I guess I got to go to New York or LA.
Now you could go to Georgia. Now you could go to Florida because the market here is moving like crazy.
Chicago, New
Mexico. Yeah, yo, get it done, guys. Travel everywhere. I want to see what you guys do. So,
well, I want to circle back real quick on something you said about not seeing Zot, because we're talking about Scott McCloud's Zot and not seeing it in your local comic shop. I didn't either. And my local comic shop was called The Lion and the Unicorn, and that was in downtown Birmingham.
Cool name.
Nice.
Cool name, cool shop. I mean, it was going
it run
there.
by British people?
I don't know. I was too young to know the owners, but I did see George Takei in there once.
Oh, word, cool.
So that was cool. Didn't meet him, but I was young. But I didn't. I was going there and buying X-Men and Avengers and just all the normal stuff.
Okay.
Teen Titans, and then there was a hobby shop, a place where you would go to buy models and D&D books and things like that.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that hobby shop, they had all the best graphic novels up high, because back then they wouldn't let you buy Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke, things like that. All those were up high. And then they had a shelf of comics, and I don't know who was doing their ordering, but they had the weirdest stuff. And Zot was, I mean, they had a couple of mainstream stuff, but they had all this weird stuff, and they wouldn't get it regularly. They would just randomly have an issue 13 of Zod or issue 22.
That I would get so angry at that shop. Why are you putting holes in my collection?
What decade was that?
This was like the late 80s.
Okay, so, I was about to say, because I didn't see Zot in the comic stores either, but I do recall in the 80s I started to get more into indie stuff because it started becoming more available at the comic book stores.
Well, I don't know what was going on at this particular hobby shop, because they weren't a comic book store, but this is where I discovered Scout and Zot and Airboy and all kinds of stuff like that.
Even Airboy, check that out.
Yeah.
What? So you were put on to greatness then early on. Thank God for that game shop. I wish I had that, because I had to get very acclimated into the bigger brands first, and then I reached out thanks to Image, but only to know that the great Scott McCloud, is the forefather of all that look.
Sure.
I mean, of course, he's a daddy. Alan Morris called him the daddy. Right? That's facts now. So, Ben, have you had a love of comics as well, like this, like that?
Yeah, I had a kind of similar story to Scott. My parents I'm a little older, and my parents grew up in the comic book scare and lived through that, and they did not think comics were a healthy thing for anybody to want. And
so they fell for that for them.
Yeah, they weren't, let's go ban them but they were like, they're going to make you into a juvenile delinquent. You shouldn't read these things. And so I loved comics as a kid and just couldn't get my hands on them. And it wasn't until, like 10, 11, somewhere around there that they sort of relented because they saw how much I loved them and finally let me buy some.
Okay, and when they relented, that just means he kept begging until they got to the point. All right, God damn it, which one do you want?
Yeah, that was pretty much what happened. It was like it became just like, what do you want? I want nothing if you're not going to give me comic books. So it's like, yeah,
and just standing there with the face.
At some point, they gave in and started letting me buy comics, and I got lucky.
Did they peruse what you purchased though?
They did. My mom read at least 2/3 of the comics that I bought.
Oh, she read them. Oh, so she
read
fan herself.
My mom read every issue of X-Men that I ever bought.
I did not know this story. I did not know that
she has become a lifelong fan. Does she admit it or not?
She did. She actually.
She said, really "Okay, I like this stuff."
she grew to like the X-Men. She liked science fiction. She was a science fiction reader. And so
she understood the value of amazing writers just with some sequential art to help the imagination along.
Exactly. And I think she saw that later in life. She began to see it, especially also when she discovered Star Trek comics, because she loved Star Trek and she loved all the novels.
Wait,
she was like, there's this world of comics.
Oh my God. So all of a sudden now it was okay. Yeah. Honey, I'm sorry what I told you before. Did your daddy get convinced though?
Was it
no.
Was it the gold?
He said that.
My dad grew up in New York and grew up with Stan Lee and knew his relatives who had the comic book company. And he thought that everybody involved with comics was terrible and that the industry was terrible. He was never convinced that the industry was anything other than terrible.
Oh, wow. So crazy.
There was no saving him.
My God.
And it was a pretty bad industry. I mean, up until Scott McCloud and First Eclipse and then Image started to change things. It wasn't
right. Yeah, there we go. Hey man, high five, brother. We thought the same there. He spoke about that and why he was kind of happy that DC didn't take this stuff. So Bracy, floor is yours, kiddo.
I was going to ask him, with the Star Trek comics, were they Gold Key or Marvel that your mom started getting into?
I think actually from my mom, it might have been the DC ones with the Perez covers. I think those are what I bought.
Were those? That was with the Star Trek the motion picture, right?
Yeah, it would have been around that era.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Not Marvel.
I gotta look that up real quick because I don't remember these Perez covers. That sounds awesome.
Right now, Dallas is about to go on an eBay thing.
Oh yeah,
I do. Sadly, the artwork inside was not equal
Wasn't as good.
Perez's covers.
Oh, still that's a classic problem.
So, one thing I appreciate about this so much, as I've already said, I know Scott basically for one thing, and you guys have really opened up my eyes to so much more, because his name has never really popped up for more than this, unless you're just and I really thought I was pretty deep into comic book lore and knowledge, but I love the fact that you guys have given me something new to get into.
Yes.
And as you were just saying in the pre-show, that you want to continue in this vein, finding independent and potentially lost, undiscovered properties and creators, and get them out there so people can get to know them and discover their work. And I am incredibly grateful that you brought these things to my attention. I'm very keen on reading Zot now. I can't wait to check out Destroy and see what else Scott has got out there, because
I want Destroy so
this
bad.
film, it really, I like getting into his mindset, and that's one of the most exciting things as well. Finding out about his dad's engineering background and the influences he has, from his familial to his professional, and how that led into his whole process of making comics, and then by extension writing the book on how to understand comics. Because coming from that engineering perspective, he just picked it all apart and just kind of assembled the puzzle pieces back together, and he made a really exciting blueprint So I was glad to actually hear these things in his voice. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And that's a great observation about that engineering being in his blood. And you see it in how he approached comics back with Zot. And of course, you see it with Understanding Comics and the other books he wrote about the craft.
It was wonderful. Like he was trying to introduce, manga early on to the American publishers. They were just refusing. And so what does he do with his own book? I mean, he introduces all of that.
I mean, that's why a lot of guys do their own books, is like they've got a story or a visual style or something they want to experiment with and get out there, and you just do it. Because if you don't do it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, but black and white Zod is definitely one of the first tastes a lot of kids had of manga in America.
That was also a great era for comics, in that anyone who had a crazy idea, it seemed, could really just make their own comic. And there were all those independents, and a lot of them are garbage and terrible, but there's gems in there that are fantastic. Yeah. And there's ones that are terrible, but just the energy and the excitement the creators brought to them. Yeah. You look at them and you're like, this is kind of charming. There's something great about this.
Yeah, really. Who would ever think that an Aardvark barbarian or Ninja Turtles would ever take off? Right. But like it's I love how experimental all that was. It's my appreciation for independent comics that ended up bringing me to things like Concrete, Sin City, and other really experimental titles that got outside. Even though I have this tremendous love for superheroes, as I got into my adult years from like 16, 17, 18 forward, I really wanted to explore more of these, not necessarily adult material, but like these really interesting outside of the superhero genre themes, which I think is also a big appeal of manga. And he says like one of his favorite things was Elf Quest, which is weird because it's so Disney-esque, but it's also mature in a lot of ways. So really exciting stuff.
Yeah, definitely. There's dozens of great. So where Ben and I are coming from with this Zot doc, and hopefully with more like this moving forward. Well, actually, let me give you a little bit of backstory to the Zot doc.
Because, yeah, that's what I want to know. Because thank you. I know all the stories. Because how did it even come about? Why him?
Well, no, it's a great question. Why? And the answer to that, the story of this doc will kind of help elucidate our project moving forward. So Ben and I actually set out to make a documentary specifically about Eclipse Comics. Okay. And so we were working on a truck one day, and I presented him with the idea that it'd be very easy to make a totally awesome documentary about Eclipse Comics. And I remembered in my memory, he thought it was a great idea. He recently told me he thought it was a terrible idea.
So, but he needs a neck brace for this show. They know.
Yeah. But he came around to it, and because I think in some ways it seemed like an interesting world to explore, and maybe some low hanging fruit. These are creators we could easily get feelings like that might maybe started to turn the tide to the idea that this is a good idea. Well, we just struck out right away not struck out in a bad way. We struck out on the quest by interviewing Larry Martyr. So Larry Martyr, who wrote Bean World and also ran Image for a while. And we had a great interview with Larry, and then we pretty quickly got an interview with Scott. And all of this was, again, working up towards making this Eclipse documentary. So we had a really, really great interview with Scott and talked a lot about Zot. And then the Eclipse documentary specifically kind of ground to a halt. Now, it's still on the back burner, but we just lost a bit of the momentum in terms of getting the essential people we needed to get to tell that story. But so COVID hit, and we were looking at we had all this great footage and what to do with it. And we'd actually gone back to Scott multiple times by this point and had multiple interviews with him. And so we thought, well, we have all this great stuff with Scott talking about Zot. We might as well just see if there's a short in here. And then that's how this short film about Zot in particular came about. And then that created the inspiration moving forward for us to try to find these, what we consider to be the most important comics you've never heard of. That's kind of like a tagline to the venture.
Understanding, love the tagline. Understanding ... That's a good show. And then whatever the creator's name is, because let me before you even continue, let's show the fans the amazing trailer.
Sure.
But again, this is touring on GeekFest, folks. So check out where they're going to be, They're like all over the fan expo stuff right now. Dope rooms with a great attendance. You're gonna love this. Check out this amazing trailer. Did you see that beautiful art? I mean, that caught me like immediately. That's what struck me. I'm like, whoa, because I love black and white art.
I think that's like the
Yeah.
best way to introduce the comic is you
Yeah,
just give us the first couple of pages.
Yeah,
Oh.
we just tried to
It's
honor and
fantastic.
throughout the whole doc. We tried to honor the art. We never. You'll see on it. Ben was very focused on this, and I think it was the right thing. Was when we did scans or took pictures of the art, we didn't really clean it up much. We tried to, as much as possible, let the paper be seen. Let any of
Thank
the
you. Yes.
yeah, because and that's the thing
It's
about
no
this.
school paper. The only thing you need to do is scratch and sniff version when this scene comes on.
Yeah. But the thing is about the kind of comics that we're going to go after with this doc series moving forward. These are comics that, for the most part, haven't been digitized. If we were to go get, like, for example, Scout, a wonderful comic from the 80s, that's never been. I mean, maybe
Now it has.
it has been digitized. Okay,
I
well,
think
that's
so.
pretty popular. Well, there's lots and lots of comics out there that are just lost to time and that are great, wonderful comics that could use a proper exploration. So that's where we're trying to head with this thing.
No, I love it, all for it, because as long as it's still out there in print somewhere, nothing is ever lost. And I do approve of digitizing things just because things can be lost. Being a film fanatic as well as a comic fanatic, it breaks my heart anytime I hear about the original film stock of a film being lost in a fire or anything like that.
Yeah. Don't make me sadder than already. Yeah.
So I really appreciate the fact that you guys are keeping these things alive with your work here, and introducing them to a new generation of people who might be ready to move on from the standard American superhero fare to something that's a little bit more thought provoking.
Yeah. I want to talk to Ben here though, because how was it for you helping to put this together? You know what I mean? And how much research did you do? Were you familiar with that?
Yeah, what were your roles in the project?
Well, Dallas was the director, and I was the producer, and I was familiar with Zot. To tag back to something I was saying earlier was I got lucky. The comic book store in my hometown was called Outer Limits, and they had everything. And
truly Outer Limits.
They carried every comic there, and more importantly, when things didn't sell, he put them in the back issue bin. And when he had two of something in the back issue bin, it went in the 25-cent or 50-cent bin, depending on what year it was.
Good old
so I had a huge collection of independent comics because I was too broke to buy them for $1.99 or $1.50 a piece.
I don't blame you.
But for 50 cents a piece, here's 4 of them. I'll try this book. And so I had a huge quantity of indie books that I had 4 or 5 issue runs of that I had read and been like, all right, I got a vibe for this. And some of them I went and hunted down, and some I just had these little sparse collections of. And so I kind of knew Zot from that. But when Dallas started talking about Zot, I went back and collected them and read them all. And I was like, this is a whole different experience reading all of these in a row than just reading the 4 that I grew up with.
Big on comics, basically. Love it.
It changes you. And so that was for me the big thing. And then so in making this documentary, it was a lot of us talking about how we were going to make this thing work together, how we were going to make a film that's, most documentaries, you're getting lots of people to talk, and we just wanted to have Scott talking about Scott. And so it became very much about we want these. I watched so many comic book documentaries before we started this process, and so many of them I found would take the artwork and cut it up in After Effects into 3D, and constantly be animating it. And I was like, the beauty of comics, you have to capture that. You can't just make it into a bad cartoon
and expect CGI, to understand it. Fucking art on a page.
Exactly. And so that was really important, was to capture the feel of comics in this documentary, so that you could feel the paper, you could smell the
taught
age.
These people just with the intro, don't you worry.
It's really apparent. I deeply appreciate seeing that on the page, when I can see like the little bits of white that managed to seep through the black ink. I can actually see the texture in the paper on some of the shots. You know, you can see the strokes. Sometimes you can see a smudge. You know, like a little bit of a. It didn't look like he was using any whiteout to correct some things. So it's really beautiful to see that sort of thing. Even though I work digitally these days, I still have a deep appreciation for everybody who still does it with a pen or a brush or whatever. And it's, man, there's so much nostalgia to see a piece of art on newsprint.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about art. I need to know what equipment was used here, yo, because again, it was for you to bring up the pages so crisp, you know.
Yeah,
in
really
this
great
video
shots.
format. What type of equipment were you using here?
Those were just some very high resolution scans. Okay. We probably will do it differently moving forward and take actual photos of the pages.
So it was
like a scanner.
Scan. Oh, damn, bro.
Yeah,
that's a very good scanner. Then
they got a NASA scanner or something. That's what they got.
No, the resolution was so high, it made it very difficult to work on the images. And now, I mean, we made this a while back, so now
the gigs I edit now, and I understand size. And when these guys submit imagery to me, that's so big, I get so upset because I'm like, you know how long this is gonna take me now.
Mm-hmm. But moving forward, we'll probably take Ken Burns style, actually film or video, take photographs of the pages that we do.
I love it.
Those are high quality scans, because like it really looks like I was holding the page in front of me, like watching it on my iPad, which has the Retina display, which is just super high res, and they look great. So good job.
Well, that's
guys.
great to hear, because that 100% was the hope. What we were going for.
You got it, bro. I mean, this should get picked up as a show. I mean, we need comic book men. We need this.
Sure.
So this would make such a great series. Just such a great pop culture series. I love the fact that it's a couple of independent creators who are highlighting independent creators. Beautiful thing.
I also think, and this is something, when we first talked to Larry Martyr, we talked to him about trying to make this series of documentaries. And one of the things he said that really stuck with me, he was like, the thing is, the era where things are going to get lost. We talk about films being lost. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The era that we're going to lose is the era right before the internet. Yeah. The stuff in the 60s and 70s, that was documented and talked about. But that late 80s, 90s era, that's the era that everything about it was just on paper and it was all disposable, and it's not going to be captured on the internet the way everything is now.
Yeah,
and
could you imagine they had internet then, though? Oh my God, we would have been all trouble.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I try and collect as much physical media as I can of anything I really love.
I mean, look, I finally refound. I didn't buy anything. I was at MegaCon this weekend, right? I didn't buy anything till the last day, and it's only because I was walking down and one vendor opened, right? So the first box I go to, I just randomly just put my hand in. What's this? I'm like, I have this. I don't know if you guys.
Oh, dang. Oh, I love those books. Those are great books.
I had this when I was a kid, and then to refine them now.
Wait, y'all keep talking. Hold on.
We got another fan.
Nightbreed versus Hellraiser. I mean, who wouldn't love this? For people that don't know, this is the first time they cross paths. So this is the first Clive Barker multiverse event, if you will.
Yes.
I mean, Yo, I was so happy that I even showed my brothers, and they're like, "Do they have another one?" Uh-oh.
Did that happen before Rawhead Rex appeared in the Night Vale comic?
Oh yes,
Oh.
brother. Yeah.
Wait, check this shit out.
Oh my god. Oh no, you
Look.
didn't.
Oh,
No, you don't, bro. No, you don't.
You're
Where,
definitely.
where?
I bought this in Birmingham, Alabama. I don't know, 25 years ago or something.
Oh, bro. I just found and have them in my box is Tapping the Vein. I'm trying
Oh,
to finish
love that
again.
book.
Oh,
We
Oh,
have
covers.
those.
Oh man, I'm amongst brothers.
Yes,
I love
yes.
it. And then the only other thing I picked up because I'm a Conan guy. You know, I found 3 Savages that were really.
oh yeah.
Those
I
are
paid a
cool.
little less.
Those
than
are
the
all
cover.
great.
Yeah, but I was like, yo, I mean, number 67. Look how gorgeous. Looks like a painted art. You know.
Yeah, totally gorgeous.
So, man, I find Hellraiser fans here. I love it. Thank you. All right, so you need to. Is this only going to be kept the comics, or are you going to do maybe independent filmmakers that have been lost to time as well?
Well, first we only made one so far, so we got to be successful with the comics, and then we'll see.
Mhm.
I think you got something that is absolute. You know, not just gold but platinum, son. You have something beautiful here, in just like Bracy has said, because he's an independent creator. So you know he's touched by you trying to help those.
I know, like if this was on DVD or Blu-ray, I would buy a collection of these stories because, like Scott, and I might be a smaller demographic because I am an artist, that sort of thing. But real artists do what Scott does. Like you research those who've come before. You stand on the shoulders of giants, and one day hope that somebody will stand on your shoulders and learn from you. And I just love all that history, and it was so thoughtful, the perspective that we got from Scott. So it's completely invaluable to me as a creator and artist, and it's opened up my mind in all new ways and possibilities when it comes to thinking about that.
I want to know something here though, because great questions that opened Scott up. It's a very you guys created a very personal story to this. So you were pulling heartstrings. Guys,
I love the way you shot it. It was very intimate.
And who was interviewing?
Mostly Dallas.
Yeah, but Ben and I would do it.
Hey,
we would do a lot of work beforehand, figuring out. We actually the method, and this is a great method if you can, if you can have this luxury, is to do multiple interviews with a subject. To do an interview, go home, see what you have, and see what new things come out of what new questions come out, what areas you want to explore come out of that, and then on that second time when you go in, you can get a bit more personal. And not only are you armed with all your new ideas, but there's a level of trust that's been built. So when you go in for multiple interviews, you're able to really, really get the good stuff. So that would be hopefully be the method moving forward.
As a guy that loves to interview people, obviously, I mean, do you set that up like pre-hand? Like, all right, guys, we're gonna have one. I'm gonna review some material, and we may need to do another one. Do you prep them in advance for that?
We will moving forward. With Scott, we didn't. It was just. We were learning.
It was just available.
We also kind of surprised him. He knew we wanted to talk to him about Eclipse.
Okay.
And I don't think he thought we were going to sit down. He was going to talk about Eclipse for 15 minutes and he was going to be out of there. And we set up and he talked about Eclipse. And then we dropped our stack of Zot comics in front of him and made him sit there and look at each one and tell us something about it.
So wait. Those books were yours?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Where do you live again?
That copy of Destroys Bins too.
Hey, look at you!
I got a lot of comics in the garage. They built
in the garage.
I guess.
But yeah, that worked really well. Was letting him talk about having him hold these books that he hadn't held in a while and talk about what they meant to him. Really is where the personal stories came from.
I gotta say, as somebody who when I was making films, I studied film as thoroughly as I did comics. I thought, especially shocking to hear, like you were kind of learning on the fly, because I'll tell you, that looks as professional as any doc I've ever seen. It's really well done. I love the setups. I love the shots. I love the lighting. I love the composition. and the fact that you were able to get all this out of Scott. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you got like tons of footage that didn't make it in. I would love to see all of that. Everything. Give me everything Scott had to say. It's like everything is gold.
Oh, don't wait. There's gonna be an understanding uncut somewhere.
Well, we talk. First off, thank you for the compliments. That means a
welcome.
lot to us.
Yeah.
We worked really hard to make it come across as professional when it was kind of a band-aid job. You know, as we were pointing out, we went in there to talk about one thing and then just happened to have this footage, and then we pulled something out of it, and then we went back for a second interview. In terms of something uncut, that would be something going forward that could be fun to do. We've talked about doing audio versions of, you know, a long audio, and maybe if this was something where we ended up doing like something through Patreon, for example,
Mhm.
I could see a world where we have the main film, but then if you're a subscriber or a patron, then you could get access to like these 2-hour long, 3-hour long feeds that are just big audio dumps of the whole thing.
Yeah, that'd be
there
great.
really are.
'Cause I'm
Sorry.
I'm a 3-hour podcast listener. Like I'd be down for that.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and we could have done. I mean, we have plenty of stuff on the floor with
Mhm.
Scott. You know,
Scott speaks beautifully, and he speaks about such a wide range of subjects. There were so many things we had to cut out of this that were completely fascinating if you're interested in comics, and it was painful to cut them out. But there's only so many minutes.
Man,
Killing
you
your
could
children.
you could do an understanding comic taco now.
That's the thing about making a film. You got to kill your children, and that's the suckiest part.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, yo. So do you have any ideas at all on whom the next one may be on after this?
Yes,
I mean, come on, a tease, something. Any ideas?
I have
It's floating
suggestions
around.
if you need some.
Well, we take suggestions, but I think, well, Ben, you're the producer, so I don't know, whatever we can
Well,
talk
I mean,
about.
we've this all started in a lot of ways. Zot was Dallas's favorite indie comic growing up. It was the book that meant the most to him, and for me, the reason why we started our interviews with Larry Marder is Bean World was my favorite comic book growing up. It was a mind bending. It was like no other comic book I had ever read, and it changed how I looked at stories. And so I think that getting Larry to sit down and really go in depth into how he created a comic book that is so different from every other comic book is something that, and also a comic book that so few people really know anything about, I think is something that needs to happen.
A disservice. Let me tell you, thank you for putting me on for real.
Yes.
Yeah, Bean World's great. I mean, and you know, Dark Horse reprinted it a few years ago, but even then, I don't think it's widely read, and it's a comic book that we can love as adults. My 10-year-old, my 9-year-old, they've read it, they love it. It's just one of the greatest comics ever. So we're really hoping to do that next and turn people on to Bean World.
Oh, so you hand these books to your kiddies too? Like, yeah, check this out.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking forward to
Love
that
good
because,
parents.
like Scott's work, I've actually never heard of Bean World. So, like, you guys are just giving me a whole new vista of things to check out.
Oh, Bean World will just put the third eye in there. You'll really, I mean, it's a
Nice.
mind expanding experience. It's a wonderful book.
There we go. In the next
I'm
episode, here
already
we go.
salivating.
Racy is Strange. Love it. No,
I
but
love it
guys,
'cause
yeah,
I used to
go ahead,
enjoy
Brady.
strips like Dreams of the Rarebit Fiend. It's like just weird, out there, esoteric stuff. So this sounds really exciting.
Guys, yeah, let's keep doing what you're doing. Folks, you got to check out geekfestla.com. That's where it's at for the schedule. All right. So you can see where this film is being played. Because trust you me, if you're a fan of documentaries, you're a fan of comics, especially independent comics, or just comics in general, screw that. Because you're about to get put on and blessed on to something that if you were not aware of, that the market is about to get hot for Zot. Let me tell you, it's gonna get nuts. So Dallas and Ben, flowers time. Just thank you, as Bracy mentioned earlier, and gave you flowers. But for real, thank you for being forward thinking and blessing those people that have not had that opportunity, if you will, that have worked so hard and created something that obviously both of you love so much. You know what I mean? And so thank you for spreading that love and
Yes.
introducing him to us and whomever else you're about to introduce, because I see your fans. I see homie's artwork in the background. Homie pulled out a Hellraiser book, and as a fellow Cenobite, I'm a villain. I needed to be a Cenobite. I ain't screw that. I'd rather be a Cenobite, Megabyte. You know what I mean? Don't mess with me. Love it. Guys, you guys are just awesome. Dallas, Ben,
Thank you.
God bless. Keep going on your journey. Nothing but love, success, and happiness. I need to see more. I can't wait for the next episode and more. You guys are just smashing it. So again, check out the creator they spoke of in this particular program. ScottMcCloud.com, and not McCloud like Highlander, even though he is a Highlander because he is one of a kind. But he rocks. Check out those books. Follow Dallas right there. Ben didn't seem to hit send either. Ben, do you have anything?
It's fine.
Do you have anything, Ben?
Nope. Let it go.
You know what? You know what you need to do? Do you have
they can reach Dallas.
Credits?
What was that?
Do you have IMDb credits at least?
I do have. I have lots of IMDb credits.
Look up Ben Lewis. That's Lewis L.
Ben Lewis 2 on IMDb.
Yeah, please.
And let's all find that episode of Punked, because now I'm eager to see that as well.
I want to see everything you guys worked on, yo. Again, this is awesome. The bromance, the story, comic geekiness, that brotherhood is coming together to bless, again, amazingly underrated creators. So you on like God's work right now for that community. So I wish you nothing but success, folks. You know what to do. Right, check out ComicCrusaders.com, undercovercapes.com. Most importantly, if you want to see this film and many others, check out GeekFestLA.com. Thank you. Bracy is my co-pilot. I knew you were tearing this up, and now he wrote it down too. Being World. Damn, I gotta get another one. I gotta make an excuse in my budget of why I'm spending money on this book. I feel you.
And again, I'll just like I pointed out here, I showed you all this in the pregame, but
they show it off, yeah.
So this is just a trade. You don't have to go buy all the old issues. This is just a trade
of everything.
Of all the black and whites. It was put out by a normal book publisher. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. So you have to order it. And then Bean World, same thing. Bean World's been collected by Dark Horse and put out as trades.
As a compendium like that too, though. I like them thick.
Hunt the floppies, but get the trades for the reading so you don't warp up your comics.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I do. I got so many floppies, but I do read them once. I have to. Yeah. But then they never get opened again, no matter how bad someone wants to look at it. No.
That's what my trades are all for. The repeat reading.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but the only thing is, though, you want to do repeat viewing on this. Because you're gonna learn so much each and every time. Again, Dallas and Ben did a very great job in creating a very personal story. We got to learn about his family, his journey, his creations, and like even now Bracy, like, damn, he did that book, but he did that before I am. So again, thank you for doing what you do. You definitely doing God's work. And with that, folks, thank you again for tuning in. Hasta la próxima. This is the Comic Crusaders GeekFest Special. Wepa! Thank you for listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. If you like the content, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, please visit ComicCrusaders.com and our extended podcast family over at UndercoverCapes.com. And also, make sure to download the Comic Crusaders app on the Google Play Store today.